We begin my top 24 remaining tight end rankings with tight ends that I think are low-end tight end twos. We have Juwan Johnson, Noah Gray, Johnny Munt, Hunter Henry, and Mike Gesicki. Juwan Johnson's coming off a 3-target, 2-reception game. Against Kansas City, I think they're going to have to score to stay in this game. Kansas City's pass defense against tight ends isn't the best. And so I think that with Taysom Hill out, he's going to see a little bit more action than we've seen in previous weeks. And so I think if you lack one of the elite options at tight end, you could definitely do worse than him. Noah Gray's coming off a 4-reception for 40-yard game. With Rashee Rice out, I think he's going to have to step up. I think we're going to see more 12 personnel. And New Orleans is a favorable matchup, so I think you can exploit that here if you don't have one of the better tight ends. Johnny Munt draws the Jets this week. It's a very poor matchup. However, he's in a KOC offense, and so I think there is some upside here. If he happens to score a touchdown, you'll be pretty happy. It's just not the best matchup for him. Hunter Henry's playing Miami this week. After that massive 12-target game, we haven't seen too much action from him. And so I think there are a lot better options, but we've seen massive upside before, so maybe he has a couple more targets this game. I just don't project him to have anywhere close to 12 this week. Mike Gesicki's playing Baltimore. It's a favorable matchup. However, we've seen Eric All start to take over the role at tight end. However, when he's targeted, he's played really well. I don't think he receives the massive target share that we were hoping for after the first couple weeks of production, but I do think he's an upside play, and if he happens to score a touchdown, you'll be pretty happy. Tight ends that have a lot of potential upside but haven't shown us recently are Mark Andrews, Theo Johnson, Colby Parkinson, Isaiah Likely, and Dalton Schultz. Mark Andrews has been by far the biggest disappointment at tight end for me personally, at least. It's quite confusing to see them go from heavy tight end utilization to barely any pass catchers being utilized. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson have essentially carried the Ravens offense. It isn't a great matchup either. We know that he does have upside, he just hasn't shown us because he hasn't been getting a massive target share or really any. And so I think that you're probably better off benching him, but we know that he is talented, and so there's always the potential he has a decent game. We just should probably wait until we see that. Theo Johnson faces off against the Seahawks this week. It's a plus matchup for him. He hasn't really shown too much for us this season, but he's very, very athletic. I think they're going to have to stay in this game by passing a lot. And without Malik Neighbors, I think there's a decent chance that he gets a lot more targets in this game because Malik Neighbors has gotten nearly 40% of the targets on a per-game basis. And so I do think he's a sneaky upside play this week. Colby Parkinson draws Green Bay. It's a plus matchup. Stafford's still without Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And so there's always the chance they exploit the favorable tight end matchup here. And yeah, there's a lot of potential upside. We just haven't really seen it. Isaiah Likely, same story as Mark Andrews, except in week 1 he had a massive game. He hasn't shown us much recently, but he hasn't been needed. In this game against Cincinnati, I think I would prefer him to Mark Andrews because at least we've seen 1+ game from him. But he's probably in a void until we start seeing the Ravens need to use their tight ends in the passing game or really need a passing game at all. But the upside's still there. With Dalton Schultz, last year he had a couple massive games. We haven't seen it yet. It's a plus matchup against Buffalo. We know the talent's there. It's just there's so much talent in this offense that he hasn't really been able to show it yet. I think he gets a couple grabs, but there are a lot more safe upside plays, but he does have a lot of upside. If you like what you're hearing and seeing so far, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel. I break down projections for running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks, as well as tier these rankings. And yeah, if you like what you're hearing and seeing, like and subscribe. Thanks. Tight ends that I think are reasonably high-end tight end twos with a decent amount of upside this week are Eric All, Tyler Conklin, and Zach Ertz. Eric All is starting to take over Mike Gesicki's snaps and targets. I think he's a potential breakout candidate down the stretch here. It's a plus matchup against Baltimore. They'll probably have to score a lot of points to stay in the game, and so I do think he's a sneaky upside play this week. Tyler Conklin had a massive game 2 weeks ago. It's a plus matchup against Minnesota. It's reasonable to project that the Jets will have to score a lot of points to stay in this game. And so I do think he's a solid play this week. Zach Ertz is playing Cleveland. It's a middle-of-the-road matchup. However, he's been a relatively consistent tight end for us in fantasy. And so I do think he's a very safe floor player in this Commanders offense. There just are a couple more options that have a lot more upside potentially at tight end. Tight ends that I think are low-end tight end ones are Noah Fant, Cole Kmet, and Pat Freiermuth. Noah Fant's facing the Giants this week. 2 weeks ago, he had a really solid game for us. Last week, he was hurt in the game. He played through it, but it wasn't the best output. It's a plus matchup against the Giants, and I think they choose to exploit this matchup. With Cole Kmet, he's facing the Panthers. The defense has been susceptible to basically everything this year. Caleb Williams and the Bears, I think, are going to utilize the short passing game this week. And so I think Cole Kmet's a very, very solid play with a lot of upside. Pat Freiermuth draws Dallas. I don't like this matchup for him at all. However, besides George Pickens, he's definitely the best passing game option. They're going to have to pass a lot to stay in this game. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball the entire game. And so I do like Pat Freiermuth. I think he's an extremely safe floor player with a reasonable amount of upside as well. Tight ends that I think are confidently tight end ones this week are Tucker Kraft, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, and Brock Bowers. Tucker Kraft is coming off a 9-target game. It's a plus matchup against the Rams. I think they choose to exploit this with Tucker Kraft. And so I think he has a very, very safe floor in this game. And with him having a tight end 1 overall week this past week, he obviously has a bunch of upside. Jordan Love is going to make this offense amazing again. David Njoku looks as though he's finally going to come back from injury. It isn't a great matchup against Washington, but he showed us a ton of upside this past season. I think we're going to see a good amount of upside this game. They're going to have to pass to stay in this game. And so I do like him, even though it isn't a great matchup on paper. Evan Ingram is coming back from a hamstring injury. I do think he plays in this game. The matchup against Indianapolis is one of the best ones in the NFL. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to target him early and often. And so I think he's a very, very safe tight end with a good amount of upside in this game. Jake Ferguson is playing Pittsburgh. Middle of the road matchup for him. However, he and CeeDee Lamb are essentially the entirety of the passing offense. He's easily the second target, and I think he's a very strong play this week. Dalton Kincaid plays Houston this week. It's not a great matchup. However, we started to see that he's being more involved in the passing offense. I do project him to score a touchdown this week, and I think the upside is massive. I think he's going to start being a must-start tight end 1 on a weekly basis from here on out. Travis Kelce draws New Orleans. With Rashee Rice out, he started to become more of a focal point of the offense in the short passing game. I think he sees a ton of volume. I think it's a relatively high-scoring game. And so I do think he's a must-start from here on out. And so I do think that his production is going to more so resemble the old Travis Kelce compared to what we saw early this season. Even if he has lost a step, he's still a really good tight end and he's connected to Mahomes. Trey McBride is playing San Francisco this week. It is, in my opinion, the worst matchup possible for tight ends. He's facing Fred Warner. However, it's Trey McBride. He's easily the second option in a Kyler Murray-led offense, and so he's a must-start every single week. He looks as though he's going to come back from his concussion. He practiced fully, and so I do think that it doesn't really matter what matchup he has. You're starting him with confidence. And Brock Bowers, he's coming off a game in which I thought he was going to be insanely productive. That wasn't the case. However, I do think he returns to form here. With Devontae Adams requesting a trade, I do think they're going to start featuring him a little bit more. And so it's a plus matchup against Denver, and I think he's going to have a massive game, and I do project him to score a touchdown. To conclude, tight ends that I think are low-end tight end 2s this week are Jawan Johnson, Noah Gray, Johnny Munt, Hunter Henry, and Mike Gesicki. Tight ends that I think have a lot of potential upside but haven't shown us are Mark Andrews, Theo Johnson, Colby Parkinson, Isaiah Likely, and Dalton Schultz. Tight ends that I think are on the rise and are really safe tight end 2s to potentially low-end tight end 1s that have a lot of upside if they score a touchdown are Eric Gall, Tyler Conklin, and Zach Ertz. Tight ends that I think are low-end tight end 1s this week are Noah Fant, Cole Kmet, and Pat Freiermuth. And tight ends that I think are safe tight end 1s for us this week in fantasy are Tucker Kraft, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, and Brock Bowers. Alright, you know the drill. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Is there somebody that I'm missing from the rankings entirely? Let me know below in the comment section and let me know why. With that being said, if you like what you've seen and heard, feel free to like and subscribe. I'm going to be releasing running back, wide receiver, and quarterback rankings today. And so yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks.